Good morning, America. What's not going on in the media today? Well, I wish I had a better microphone set up, but cell phones be cell phones. Anyway, in the news is more of Exxon hiding climate change and the effects to the corporation. So that's atmospheric information that Exxon has had at its disposal for a long, long time. Another part of what Exxon has had at their disposal is groundwater contamination. Groundwater flows, groundwater levels, quality, quantities across the country. Because when you drill for oil, you go by that groundwater. You go by the wells that people drink from, the aquifers that supply the fields and the paddies with all the water they need, the lakes and rivers that get polluted for a number of reasons. So this is another piece of what Exxon Production Research knew back in the 80s. It was research funded by the federal government, primarily the USGS. So after this story about Exxon's knowledge of air pollution is out, someday we'll get to the story of Exxon's knowledge of groundwater pollution and how they've covered up the cost of that. So big companies at play. The reason why Exxon's work is important from back in the 60s, even before that, is the chain of custody for the samples, because that is a sample, all of the tens of thousands of samples that they took across the globe, mostly in America, is a reference point for the future to see how much we've added on or how much we've taken out of groundwater contaminants. So that is called baseline material. It is called a chain of custody for scientific evidence that gives it meaning in future conversations, because this is what some people do. They sit around, they look at the past and history and the future and try to decide outcomes and probabilities. And that's exactly what Exxon was doing. What they found was groundwater contamination from nuclear sites, groundwater contamination from industrial sites, huge industrial sites, mining operations, plants that go unseen in the landscape unless you've traveled or had a reason to go there. So that's another piece of what Exxon research taught Exxon, taught the USGS, and yet those discussions haven't been had yet. The ties, the links between pollution, insidious pollution, the bad stuff that we know about, that we should do something about. So, yeah. So that's Exxon. Again, I was there. I touched it. I was a very tiny cog in that huge wheel working on the instruments that were telling him what elements they were finding out there. As instruments go, that was a Cadillac. A true Cadillac in its day, is channels were manually built and assigned, and they've only gotten better. So, spectroscopy in life, how we use it, why we use it, what we use it, it is a fundamental science, many applications. But that's how we've learned, some of what we've learned.